Welcome to the Capacity Podcast. Today we have Abe from Badger Metal Machine, a CNC welding and sheet metal shop in northern Jersey outside of Manhattan. Abe worked in the industry as a machinist and a production manager for many years before starting Badger Metal Machine. And he's currently trying to be as innovative as possible to make parts faster and better than he's ever made before. Welcome, Abe.
Okay, thanks for having me.
So, Abe, tell me about your business. What do you guys do?
So currently our main focus is building quality parts for machine manufacturers, designers, engineering companies. Mostly low volume orders, a lot of ones and twos. We always joke 2 is a big order because it's always a prototype for something. But we do a mix of precision sheet metal, CNC milling and turning, a lot of welding. Just got into wire EDM, into laser welding now, and just adding because our customer base is so diverse and our product that we make for people is so diverse. Just trying to continue to become more of a one-stop shop for, whatever somebody needs, because it's hard for them to maintain a good relationship with a lot of vendors when you're ordering one of each all the time. So we try to keep as much of it in-house for them to make it easy.
Not that many people start shops after working at one. What are you doing different and why'd you do it?
Main goal was a couple of goals, trying to get some personal freedom, some a little bit more say in how my day-to-day went at the shop, and trying to build an environment that was where I wanted to work. And I worked for a lot of people over a lot of years, and I knew what I liked, what I didn't like, and I wanted to combine the good things to make a place that I would want to work and hopefully would be an environment other people would want to work in as well.
Describe it. What is that for you? What's a place that you want to work?
I like to have cutting edge technology is like, I like to have doesn't always have to be the newest, latest and greatest, but be on like changing with the times. Everything's adapting, new processes come out. I like to be, you guys see stuff on Instagram and, oh, do you see this new machine? I like to be like, all right, let's if this is useful and it's going to, benefit the shop, let's see about getting that machine in and trying to develop a way to use that, and just trying to stay on the forefront of what's new. And also just to try to keep a positive atmosphere in a place where everybody kind of works together. One of the main things was like, I wanted a small crew of highly skilled people. I don't want to have a bunch of people who are just like a drone, just kind of, I come in here, I punch in the clock. When I'm done, I go home. Just people who are like passionate about what they do, and put them all in a room together with the machines and the work and just kind of see what happens. And we make a lot of cool parts, make a lot of interesting stuff.
Do you find those people? Do you create them? Do you find them and then try to keep them as passionate as possible? Or what do you think the role is that you play with those passionate people?
Finding the people is hard. In general, and I like to try to bring new people into the industry as much as nurture people who are already in the industry. So trying to bring some of the young kids in out of school and get them into it. That it's challenging to find out what they want to do, because a lot of times they're like, I want to work in metal, but they don't know what specifically they want to be, or I want to be a welder. Everybody wants to be a welder till it's August and you're wearing leathers. Yeah. So they're like, oh, maybe I don't want to be a welder. Maybe I want to make stuff, but I just think welding is what it is. And they realize, oh, they'd rather run a press brake or rather run a mill. So it's interesting to see how that plays out. And then just a lot of times with like the skilled guys, you just got to leave them alone. Like they don't want to be micromanaged. So it's a challenge too when you're trying to hit deadlines. Sometimes you try to manage more than you should, but we give the guys the tools and the space to just do what they know how to do, and just trust them to do it.
Who did that for you? How did you learn the ropes and how did you find your passion?
Had a lot of jobs. I've always learned by watching. If I see somebody do it, I can probably figure out how to do it again. So I've worked at a lot of different industries and a lot of different shops. And then I had the most recent shop. I was there almost 10 years. Wow. Started there cleaning up the shop. And I was, 20 something. I didn't have anything. The guy who owned the place knew I knew how to figure things out and was pretty smart, but I didn't have the actual skill he needed. I didn't have the knowledge, but he was just come in here and come to work every day. I'll teach you how to do some stuff. And went from the guy who cleans up and helps to essentially running 30 something percent of the business, my own clients, my own input on the business, my own design and stuff like that. Kind of, involved in the hiring and of people and the buying of equipment. And it really got as far as I could go in that business in 9 something years. And then decided to go out on my own.
Did you start mechanically minded, tinkering with stuff and things like that? Or did you kind of stumble on this?
I did. No, I was a kid who always took his toys apart. Took a lot of years to learn to put them back together. But I was the one who was always breaking my stuff to see how it worked from forever. Always making something. I, had my little jigsaw and my bench grinder and stuff when I was like 10. I remember having like a little shop at the house and I would just make stuff, making like toy guns or whatever you wanted, and you just figure out how to make it. And then as you get older, the things you want change and you just learn how to make them. So went from building toy guns to working on off-road stuff and, cars and things like that.
So you're working at the shop for 10 years. What's the one thing that you wanted to buy or use that you weren't able to then, motivating you to have all this new fancy toys?
It's hard to put a finger on one thing. There's so many different tools out there. We had some cool stuff. We just adopting some of maybe the fixture benches, the welding fixture benches was one that was like, I saw the value, but it was one that a lot of people, it's a lot of money. A workbench is a workbench. Now you want a $20,000 workbench. It's hard. That's a tough sell when you got a piece of steel there that works. Mm-hmm. But now having them, it's like, man, the time it saves and the accuracy you can achieve. So maybe that. There's a bunch of stuff. It's not like one specific thing, just the ability to change with the times and keep maintaining it.
Do you think of the business as like a machine too, that you're tinkering with, trying to like adjust and mold and change and design?
The business side is the side that I've had the least experience with, the behind the scenes of running a business. And that's some over the last couple of years I've been like, on the intensive course of learning. So it's more of the behind the scenes is more of a challenge than I had assumed it would be. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but the figuring out what you have to tweak to change a business, that's much more nuanced than I originally thought. So I've got a good team put together. We got some guys in that we finally got the capacity to actually afford to hire at this point that are really helping with that side of things. Guys are much more knowledgeable on the actual like day-to-day of running a business, because it's a lot more challenging. You're trying to design parts, make parts, run a business. You got to branch out, or you got to hand those jobs off at some point. So I wish I'd realized that earlier.
Well, everybody says it's hard to start a business, but you don't really know until you try.
Hard's not the word for it.
What's the word?
Almost impossible.
You regret it?
There's days I do. Yeah. There's days when I'm like, man, I just want to go home at 4:00, hang out with my family and not worry about it till Monday morning, but there's other days where it's like, I'm my own, I'd say my own boss. The shop kind of becomes your boss.
Yeah.
There's, how it goes, but there's days it's very rewarding. There's days it beats you down, but you should try to go for a net positive at the end and do what you can.
If there's one thing you could say to yourself before you started that would absolutely make you not do it, what would that be? And then if there's one thing you could say that would absolutely make you want to do it even more, what would that be?
The hardest part is the setbacks. Every time you start getting ahead of steam, you get kicked in the teeth and you have to start over it. So you conquer your biggest problem and then something else becomes your biggest problem. So I don't know how I would have convinced myself not to, because I'm pretty stubborn.
What would the opposite side? Something that if you had some reservations, what would you say to yourself that would be like, just go do it?
So far it's working. We've made it, we're past the 3-year mark, which is a real challenge.
It is, yeah.
So it's too new for me to really know how to answer that. Like we're 3 years in, it's still a challenge. We still have struggles. We've got less, the easy struggles are less, and the bigger we get, the bigger struggles become more to the forefront. But
they say it's the 2-year mark where you can't go work for someone else anymore.
That's been something that's come across my mind when I'm like, man, this is tough. Maybe I should go work for somebody. And then I'll think about it for a minute. Or my wife will tell you, she'll tell me like, do you really think you can do that? Do you think you can go and like do that for somebody else? Do you think you can go and play second fiddle, or starting out third or fourth or whatever, wherever, and have to, once you're on your own, I don't know if you can go back.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main things that really pushed me when I was starting out was just the thought of, because leaving where I was kind of a set thing. The situation there had gotten to a point where I was leaving. So that like staying there wasn't an option in my mind, but going to work for somebody else and thinking like in 10 years, I'm going to be in the same spot. That may be what it would have been, like what pushed me over the edge. Because I did go back and forth a few times, as any intelligent person would, like maybe this is a bigger challenge than I can handle. But the thought of going into another shop and working for another guy and putting your heart and soul into it, and then 10 years later going to do it again, that I couldn't really get behind. So, but like you said, once you're on your own, it's really hard to go work for somebody else again.
You and a whole generation of new shop owners, you get to learn things in a different way. You talked before about how you could watch YouTube videos, talk to people directly, reach out online. 30 years ago, that wasn't possible. How has that experience been? How has it been tapping into that community of knowledge and information?
It gives you a lot of respect for the generation before. Some of these guys, and a lot of these older guys share their information on YouTube now, and you're like, man, these guys figured this out, and they're in a shop somewhere with worse lighting, worse equipment, worse everything than we have, and they're, no resource to turn to other than a machinist handbook if you know how to find what you're looking for in there, and your own ingenuity and what other people have taught you. And those guys really figured it out the hard way. And now I wouldn't call it easy street, but we have so much access to information. It's like, if you know how to research, you can find anything, or at least get the building blocks that you can take this guy's thing and this guy's thing and put it together and turn it into something new. So like YouTube, Instagram and stuff is like invaluable.
Do you see a shift in the manufacturing culture?
I definitely see like a lot of the older shops, the guys are closing, the kids don't want to get into it, or they're just, the economy's getting rough and they made theirs, so they're kind of over it. And the young guys coming in, it's definitely a different attitude in the shops. It's definitely a different style, different priorities, different things that would be acceptable before but aren't to newer companies. Just like little things like work environment. You walk into a shop and it's just dark. There's lights where you need them and everything's dark and the smoke has stained everything. And people don't like to work in that environment. So now it's, a little bit cleaner, a little bit brighter, a little bit, more attention to that, like a little bit more comfort in the shop. I see that with a lot of the younger company owners, that it's a little bit more quality of life in the shop instead of like, just tough, deal with it.
I mean, you guys have grown a ton in just a few years. Is that part of it, the work environment, or what do you think your secret is?
For us, it's still a very small group of people. We're 10 guys. So, and I'm still on the shop floor more than I'd like to be now, but still out there with everybody. And I think it's just like, we're all kind of on the same page with one goal. And it's, I'll go out there if we're behind on welding and grinding, I'll go out there and grind next to the guys and get it done, and we're all kind of jumping in to help each other. And I think that's kind of a key to starting out with nothing, because, when you start, you don't get to say, hey guys, I got, 401ks and all the benefits and all this. And you don't have those resources. So you have to have something else. And, having a good attitude and a team spirit about like, I'll help you guys. I'll stay late. I'll come in early. I'm not like, no, you guys go do that. I'm going to sit over here. I own the place. It's like, no, I'm going to jump in and help. I think that helps, at least for me, it helped with the growth a lot and helped keeping people in the shop interested and engaged. They knew that I was just as into getting it done as they had to be.
When I talk to you or your team, there seems to be this attitude where like you care about what you're making, where it goes in the world, like what machine it becomes a part of. I think there's probably like a 20-year period where a part's a part, you're going to make money on it or not. But if you like talk to people from the 1970s or 80s, it was back then really important too, to know where the stuff that you make is going. Like, is that something that you imbue into your business? Is it something that your guys help bring, or where does that come from?
I think a lot of that comes from the scale that we do it at. Like, we don't get to make 1,000 of them and hope that 800 are good. We have to make one. And if you make one good, you're okay. If you have to make it twice, you lost everything. So like you get one shot at most of these parts, and some of them are very large parts. Some take a lot of time, it's a lot of material, sometimes both, a lot of effort and skill to make. And if you do that and you get to the end and it's not a saleable item, you just wasted, could be weeks. So I think It's like a zero fail. Like you got to make this part right this time, or it's not even worth doing it. So I think that helps get the guys to be really engaged and passionate about what they're making. And it's also like, you're always doing something different. So it's not like, oh, you're going to make this and you're going to weld this part for the next year. It's like, we're going to make this today and tomorrow we're going to make something different. It might be different machinery, different material, completely different process, but we're going to, so it keeps everybody, nobody's getting bored.
And also every time I talk to you, you're getting into wire EDM now, you're buying a new machine. It seems like a year goes by and you have 2 or 3 different types of capabilities you've gotten really good at. Is that part of it too, or are you just reacting to what the market wants, what the customers want?
I mean, some of the stuff, I call them crimes of opportunity. Like machine comes available and I'm like, I see some use to that. It might be a used machine or some new technology. And I'm like, nah, I think we could use this at some point. So I'll buy it. And sometimes it's like the wire EDM we bought specifically for a job because we're outsourcing it, and the outsource cost on the scope of this one is actually a production job, one of our rare production jobs. It cost less to buy a machine than it did to pay somebody else to run it. So that was that. And then that job got put on hold. So now I got a wire EDM I got to find work for. The job will happen, but now it's going to sit for 3 months. So now we're looking, all right, we got an EDM machine. Let's find what we can do with it. So we've got a few other jobs we're running on it now. And we pulled another job that was an outsourced process, and we pulled that in-house. And now we're going to run that on that machine. So, it's a little bit of both as far as when you buy something different, especially with the new tech. It's not always because you have a job for it. It's because you see the need, or see the potential for a need,
Two-sided coin, right? Same opportunities provide both the growth and the setbacks you were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
Any big ones, any big setbacks that you'll remember forever?
The most recent one is just we got slow and I didn't react fast enough. We started this year like absolute insane. You couldn't keep up. It was like every day, big orders coming in the door. And we're like, how are we going to get this stuff done? We got focused on that and we're like just running crazy production. And then it was like a faucet shut off. And like in an effort to keep the guys on payroll, I sweated it out longer than I should have. And it hurt me more in the long run than it would have if I'd been a little bit more proactive. That one was tough because we really had a head of steam. We'd broken past 3 years. We're like, man, we're really gonna like this is working in a good way, and that kicked us hard. But other stuff is, we had our core customer the first year really hit hard times, and his work went from our top customer to almost zero overnight. He called me one day and said, I got no more work to send you. I was like, what are you talking about? You said you had like 6 years worth of work. He's like, I do, but I can't, like I stuck with material costing from 2015 and stuff cost me double. It's like, I got to just do what I can in-house, and I can't. And overnight, our biggest customer kept like 5 guys busy, just gone. So that was another one that was a real challenge to overcome. And that one was something I couldn't drive. That's just happens. So trying to scramble to replace that before you lose your people, that's the biggest challenge. You find good people, you want to keep them around. Yep. So you do what you can, even if you don't have something profitable for them to do, just to keep them around so that when the work comes back, you don't have to go try and find a new team you can rely on.
How does it feel in the moment? How do you find the commitment to keep pushing and to try new things, to try to recover?
There's got a lot of people relying on you. There's not a lot of fail options. Like, it's not just me. I got 10 guys with families. I got my own family. All that those people all rely on at the company, which at the end of the day really boils down to me and my decisions. Like, I can make a bad decision and 10 people and their families don't have an income, So that's those types of things, stuff that keeps you up at night and gets you up in the morning to, even when you don't feel like it and the days are rough, you don't have a choice. Too many people rely on you.
So the whole faucet turns off earlier this year. Are you trying to explain it? Trying to guess when it's going to come back? Like, what's going through?
It's back now. It's back and cruising, So it was just, 2 months where not a lot of work was coming in, maybe 6 weeks, but we were busy because we had a backlog and we chewed through our backlog, and I wasn't paying good enough attention, and we cruised right into a wall. And went from having more work than we could handle to barely enough. So then you burn through cash reserves, and then you get busy on the other side of it. And then you're like shuffling, because you got all the work in the world, but you can barely afford to get it done.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a feast or famine.
But you're sharpening your intuition.
Mm-hmm. Getting good tools in place too, with softwares, things like that, Fulcrum demand planning, things like that, being able to see how many hours worth of X process we have over, booked. That's becoming quite helpful. That's something that I never even thought of, at the beginning. There was no software on my mind when I started this. I hadn't even considered it. And then after figuring out how much I had to do, trying to find ways to manage it, went through a couple of ERPs, found you guys. And that just knowing that I can log in and say, oh, I got enough work to keep the guys busy for 6-8 weeks from today, say. I don't know what it is, but that's reassuring. And just to have access to that data one way or the other.
Being open to new technologies and trying new things, you think that's where the industry is headed? Or do you think you're unique in that?
It goes back to the new shops versus old shops. A lot of the old shops, they're not interested in finding something new, because you go to a guy and say, listen, I got this welding process that'll cost you $40,000 to get into, but it'll change your complete welding. Like, I can buy 3 TIG welders, high-end TIG welders for that same money. How do I justify that? So it's hard to convince the older shops, the older owners, because they've been doing it for 50, 60 years.
And doing it well.
And doing a great job making money. So the newer shops, though, I think the newer shops that are adopting the new technology, and the older ones too, are going to surpass everybody. Like, you just take laser welding, for instance, it's nothing. They can hold a candle to it. If you're doing sheet metal and you don't have laser welding in house, you're going to get left behind.
How soon?
It's hard to gauge. I don't know how widely it's been adopted so far, but I can tell you, like, we've almost phased out TIG welding on sheet metal, and we get things done in a third the time. It's better quality. Customers are happier. It's, you make a better part for less money and less time. And it's like unheard of in a process. It's always 2, not 3, but you hit all 3 on that. And that one specifically is like one we're really betting on huge. And I'm going to try and buy another unit this at FabTech. I'm hoping I picked my first one up last year. It's booked. It's been booked forever. I'm looking to get another one.
Are you the one that's educating your customers on these technologies, on the machines that are out there, and say, we can do it like this and the parts can be better and you're going to have a cheaper price? Or how does that knowledge transfer?
On the customer side with that specific process, the only thing they're going to realistically see is the quality went up and the price went down. It doesn't, once the parts
do they always notice?
No, not always. Yeah, it's big companies. It's a very disconnected, so some of the smaller ones do notice. Some of them have been very happy with it. We've specifically, especially if we can cut a cost on a part, or if it's like a huge quality change. Like, listen, guys, I've told a few of them, like, we're delivering parts today. Tell the purchasers, like, whoever needs to see, like, whoever you would want to show something cool to, bring the people who make decisions and show them this. Like, this is, like, we can give you this on all your sheet metal parts, and cut your cost, and we know a lot of these are parts we've been making for years, and we can see, like, I know what it looked like before. I know what it looks like now. And they were happy with what I made before. I'm like, guys, this is the best thing we've ever made of this product. Like, look at this and get your people involved on, like, prioritizing us or other people with that type of capability, because they should start speccing it on stuff,
So a lot of people like new stuff, but most people just buy everything and half it sucks. You seem to buy only the good stuff. Like, why are you able to see
That's
it?
not true.
That's not true. You only share that with me. You only share the good ones with me.
No, some of them are a fail. Yeah, it happens. Maybe they haven't found their niche yet. I don't know, but yeah, so they're not all winners. And you can't just go buy it because it's new,
right?
You have to look at something and mess with it, and talk to people. Some of the stuff, it's hard to talk to people because nobody has it yet, but you have to do some research, and there's risk involved.
Are you visualizing it in your head? Like, as someone's explaining the technology to you, are you like trying to visualize how this laser welder is working, and imagine how it would affect your shop, or what's going on in your head?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like that process was specifically, it was like, you'd see it on YouTube, you'd see little clips, and it doesn't even look real when you first see it. It's like, that and even now you'll see like people commenting, like old welders commenting on videos. Oh, that's a simulation, or I could
CGI
break that with a Q-tip or whatever. People just don't trust it or don't believe it's real because it's too perfect.
Because they can't do it themselves.
It's not something you could do
without it. Yeah.
It doesn't look like a real welding process you do by hand, but it is, So that when I saw like a lot of videos, I'm like, man, if this is half as good as it looks in these little clips, I need to have it. So we made a deal and got one in house, and it took me a little while to get it set up and figure out the safeties and how to really use it correctly before I make somebody else go out there and hurt themselves with it. Right. But once we started with it, there was like everything we put in front of it was like, man, this is unbelievable, to the point where now, the guys who do TIG welding are running out of stuff to do. They're,
I mean, TIG welding was the biggest bottleneck in manufacturing for a while.
And the nicest process, the best process, And most of the sheet metal we do is like the outer skins of machines, the stuff you're contacting and seeing. I wouldn't use laser at this stage. It'll get there, but at this stage, I wouldn't use it for like structural welds and stuff like that on like a tube frame, because I wouldn't really be super confident in that. But on your sheet metal parts, it's just as strong as a TIG weld, and there's no heat distortion, things like that. So it will replace TIG welding in those aspects. Where you still will need it is like in your pressure vessels and things like that. You'll still have those highly skilled TIG welding guys doing that. But as of right now, the laser is replacing it all on stainless and steel for our sheet metal.
One thing you said earlier is you talk to your customers. You're like, hey, like try to spec stuff out with this capability, or one of our competitors that also can do this. That's like a pretty positive sum, connected manufacturing way of thinking. The manufacturing like culture that I grew up in, it was hush hush. Don't tell anybody about our secrets. We got to keep our knowledge and stuff inside. I know you learned a lot from YouTube, but you're really open about sharing all this stuff. I hear that you talk to people, whoever wants to contact you to learn about stuff, you're willing to talk to them.
There's a lot of work, man. Like there's plenty of work to go around. I can't do all the work that comes in the door. Getting it to come in the door at the right time is the real challenge, but there's work out there. I don't feel like I need to hoard the information or the work. And a lot of the guys, I have a lot of, I guess, quote unquote competitors. We're all friends. We all know each other. We all know the same customers. It's a free market. We all, I'll quote a job, you quote a job. We'll see who gets it. If I don't get that one, I'll get the next one. It's not that big of a deal to me. Like it's not, there's enough work to compete for that you don't have to compete over the same job and get all mad about it if it goes one way or the other, And if I can find a piece of technology that's going to help a friend of mine make more money and, improve the quality of his shop, the quality of his work, why wouldn't I want to do that? It's not like it's the last piece of sheet metal is going to get welded in the world and I got to do it, So
what do you think explains that shift in mentality? Because I'm assuming the last shop you worked at wasn't like that.
No, we were a little bit of an island there. Kind of an island unto ourselves, very self-sufficient, very capable, but not super interested in collaborating with other businesses. Certainly not businesses that were in our same space. I don't know. I like to collaborate with people. I like to learn from people. I've always learned from other people, and I like to think I've taught some people some things as well. So I never was like super closed off about sharing information and getting information. And I think the YouTube world has kind of changed that too. Cause like you get all this information for free. Other shops, I'm not the only guy. Other shops have lots of videos, lots of information out there that they share. And I've taken so much from that community. I like to give something back to it, And again, like a lot of these people are people I've known a long time. Why not share something that'll improve their business,
Are there things that you think that if you went back in time and told yourself it would actually really help? And are there things that just took time? Like no matter what you would have said to your younger self, you just wouldn't have learned it without time.
Yeah, that's when you're young, you don't take advice well, or at least I didn't. I mean, I feel like it's a trend. Also, like things that now seem trivial may not have been feasible to younger me.
What do you mean?
Well, like now I would tell anybody who starts a business, hire somebody to run your office. hire an office manager, hire somebody to do your bookkeeping and bill your customers and keep track of all this stuff that happens during the day. Don't wait 3 years to do it. And then, because once you bite that bullet and do it, like the salary, whatever it is, was worth it because you have so much more time. But then feasibility, I don't know off the top of my head what the numbers look like 2-3 years ago, but I don't know if I could have justified a salary for somebody who wasn't directly related to producing a part, But I would say the first, prioritize that very much if you're starting out. Just as soon as you can, get somebody there to take care of the non-production related administrative stuff. Makes a huge difference.
So one of the things that I notice about machinists and manufacturers is that you guys want to fix stuff for yourself. You want to figure it out. You want to understand it. You want to build it. Are there things that you would suggest absolutely figure out for yourself, like the culture, the way you want to work? Are there other things that you're like, you know what, this is just one way to do it right. Just do it that way.
I would never say to not try to learn from somebody. Because if you're like, no, I don't want your opinion, or your advice. Advice, like, unless you're paying for it, advice is free.
Right.
Like, it doesn't hurt to hear somebody's pitch. Even if you don't go with it, then you might hit a problem and, I remember I heard that somewhere. Or, even if you don't take their advice, you can like, I should have listened. But I would never not be interested in hearing what somebody, at least what their idea is. The only time that I wouldn't agree with myself on that is when you're training somebody new and they come in with a lot of ideas and especially you get like a young kid. I think about this, like, listen, bud, I've done this a ton of times. I know where you're going with this. I've tried that. It won't work. So like sometimes you'll be like, listen, just watch for a while and formulate some experience and then come in with some ideas after. But it's very rare. It's only usually when you're teaching like a 20-year-old kid who just walked in off the street, that's where you'll kind of hold your opinions for now. Otherwise, if somebody has an opinion, I'm interested to at least entertain it. You learn a lot from people, just in casual conversations. Even you pick up something and call it up later.
Have there been any magical ideas where you didn't think it was going to work, or you didn't think it was a good idea, and then when you did it, you're like, whoa? It
definitely happens all the time. There's stuff that like happens both ways. Something I thought would be great and it's a fail, and stuff that you're like, it's a Hail Mary, and then it's like, oh wow, that was way easier than I thought it would be. It happens all the time. I don't know, on a daily basis, definitely on a weekly basis, especially in the CNC machining world. It's such a nuanced thing about fixturing and work holding. And, you get 10 machinists, 10 different machines, the same part. You're going to get 10 unique ways to make that part. And if they're good machinists, they're all going to be a good part. And you really get down to like the nitty gritty of, process and time, tool life, things like that to figure out which one's best. But, a lot of it's just a judgment call, and you still get to the end result the same way, like not the same way, but you get the same part. So the machining world is very interesting in that there's not always one way. Sheet metal is a little different. A lot of times you'll have a sheet metal part that if you do something out of sequence, it won't work, and a lot of times you only figure that out by doing it wrong. But yeah, there's some stuff where it's not about an opinion. It's like you have to do this and then this and then that, or you won't be able to do the last step, where machining has that too to some extent, but it's a lot less, I feel like.
Where do you think things are headed? What's changing now? Where do you see the future going?
For Badger specifically?
For Badger, for the economy, for manufacturing?
Ooh, the economy is a tough one. I'm not super qualified to speak on that. I know I've seen some big companies with some hesitation for Q1 next year, which, they have staffs of people to think about that and look at that and research that. So you just you see what hiring and layoff decisions different companies are making, like the big companies.
And you're paying attention to that all the time.
As much as I can. If I, was at the gym and the guy was just talking to a guy and turns out he's an engineer, got laid off by a gigantic company locally. And he said, yeah, they're nervous about the end of the year. Usually if they're nervous, they'll lay you off. And if it doesn't go as bad as I think, they'll bring you back in. But the big unlimited budget companies are playing it safe right now. So we'll see. We try to be nimble. We're not tied to one industry or one process or one part. So, we're still a small shop and we have a lot of capability. We try to keep it broad on purpose. So if one sector slows down, we're not, we're stuck. We start making something else. Yeah, you talk to 10 people, you get 10 different answers on that one.
Are you seeing any changes in your customers, the type of people who are designing these parts, what they're asking for, what they want?
Not as better designs is the right word, but more complete designs. You're getting like 3D softwares are really just far and away changed everything about how we make everything. And a lot of we make a lot of parts for companies, and we're using drawings from the 70s, drawings from the 80s, from the 50s, sometimes hand drawn, scanned 10 times, we're seeing definitely a shift into even those types of shops are starting to digitize those and rework those and find some of the issues they had that they can now they can actually see internally because they 3D modeled it. So I'd say by and large things are improving design wise, just because the technology has changed where you can get a better design and you can build something completely simulated. You can find all the problems, hopefully all the problems, before you even build it. A lot of these guys, they'll have an entire machine running in a computer before they make any parts. And that you don't run into as many having to change on the fly as much, it seems like.
What about the future for Badger? And why Badger? Where does the name come from?
Badger? That came.
We thought you were from Wisconsin.
No, not from Wisconsin. Although I didn't realize the connection to Wisconsin with that until after I kind of committed to the name, and then realized there's a couple other shops that were similar names, all in Wisconsin. So then I've kind of gotten associated with cheese, I guess, at some point here. But no, a good friend of mine was really into Badgers. I worked with him for a number of years, and he always. Talking about Honey Badger doesn't care. Honey Badger just just be a Honey Badger. Just get it done. Don't care. There's no challenge. There's no adversary they'll back down from. They're impervious to snake venom. They can't be stopped, So I really liked that attitude. And it was something that as we worked together, we were, doing ironwork type work, then doing some structural stuff. And I was like, it might be cold. It might be rainy, but just be a Honey Badger. It doesn't matter. Just get it done. So he's since passed away, but as me and my wife were discussing different names, we're going all these different names, and she was like, "What about Badger for Kevin?" And it was kind of just in that moment, I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool." And then I was like, "I might make a cool logo." So I got online, had somebody design a logo, and I was like, "Yeah, it just kind of stuck." It was one of those things. She said it once, and I was like, "Yeah, that all kind of connects for me and works." So, and then I found out it was a big thing in Wisconsin, but.
I don't know why. Maybe there's a lot of Badgers there.
No, it is. Yeah, I'm not sure of the connection either, but yeah, they like Badgers there.
So nothing can stop Badger Metal Machine. Where are you going to go?
Hopefully not. We're doing our best. Trying to get into our own products to some extent. Certainly not to compete with our customers in any capacity, but I like the idea of building machinery. I've done some of it in the past, and I like the idea of designing and building something of my own. So we're starting to get into that with a couple clients. Lead time is a big issue with the big machine companies. So a little shop can come in and work out a design to get something built. We can do that before they get a proposal over sometimes, so we're trying to break into that a little bit on a little scale, and then looking for maybe some direct to consumer type products as well. I really personally am into off-road quads, side-by-sides, things like that. And I've built some products that I use myself that I really have worked well for me that I know aren't available. So some of that stuff I'd like to start to develop just to have a product that we can drive on our own alongside the job shop side of things.
So these machines that you're building, you have more control over them. What does that relationship look like, and how is it different than the relationship you have with the people that you're building parts for?
It's very different because when you're building a part for somebody, they defined it all on their end based on their criteria, and they have their tolerances. And as much as I want that part to work for the customer, whether it works how they wanted it to isn't actually the goal. That's their end. We just have to get the part made at the quite right quality standard within tolerance. If you hit that mark, you succeeded. Now, whether the engineer had enough coffee that morning and the part works, that's a different level. For us, we have to, when you're doing it yourself, you have to define the problem, make the part, define the tolerances, and then all the downsides on you too. If it doesn't work, you design this whole thing and you turn it on, it doesn't work, you're back to the drawing board. So it's a very different relationship to the parts you're making. And then also you have to have a customer who trusts you to do it, trusts you to listen. I'll, you know, a lot of these are fast moving type projects. It's like, listen, I have a machine that's down. The usual customer or the usual vendor that would make this, maybe an international company, who knows, you know, and it's going to take them, you know, 60 weeks to get us a machine. I'm like, well, I can get it to you significantly faster than that, but I don't have a design for this machine. I said, I want something that does this. And then you gotta, all right, I can make it and then you got to go and figure it out. And they have to have the trust. You have to trust yourself that you can get it done in the budget and the time frame, and they got to let you do it. So
how are you able to convince them to trust you?
Reputation in the industry. That's the only thing I can really say. Like I've been in that area a long time. People know me. I've made a fair number of machines that have functioned well and still do. So the right people, you know, hey, who made it? Oh, don't you, you had something made in a hurry. Oh, there's this guy. All right. And then, you know, there's at some point, it's just, they got to trust you. You know, I can do it. I'm confident I can do it. And if you know, some companies, it's not good enough. A lot of them like, all right, give it a shot, see what happens. Not as casually, but sure. You know, and then it's just, you can't fail. As long as you don't fail, you keep getting more work. If you fail, you're burned. That's the hardest part with that. You come in, they waited their time, you know, regardless of the money, you would always make that right. But they waited the time. And if you can't deliver, you know, chances of getting another contract would be very low. So it's a little bit of pressure, but it's fun. How
is the shop when you build these things? Is it different? Is it a different vibe when you're making a machine altogether?
It is, because, and it's kind of an internal issue. There's definitely other things, but a lot of the time the customer, like a customer gives us a part, gives us better documentation than we give ourselves. You know, like I can draw a part, know how to bend it, and then say, I need you to weld it like this. And then until I have a hard time slowing myself down to like, all right, let's process this out. Let's make a real drawing. Let's get this to where it looks like every other part that hits the floor. Because our guys, like, they get drawings from a customer. They kind of are used to what each customer's layouts are like. And then you give them something complete, like a napkin sketch, and it throws a wrench and everything, because like they're looking for laid out information that they're not getting. So that's probably the biggest challenge as far as like the production. Yeah. Like I want to, all right, let's just make this. Oh, you know, don't worry about that. Just get it out there and weld it, you know? Which kind of, you try to make it go faster, and sometimes you end up slowing yourself down. So it's definitely the documentation internally, I think, makes it the most different. But it's also fun because you have freedom too. Yeah. Because the guys say, oh, is this part okay? I'm like, well, I don't get to tell you that. The tolerance block tells you if the part's okay. If you're asking me, it's because it's probably not okay, and you're hoping I'll override it. But, you know, if it came all the way around to me, you're hoping I'll say, no, let it slide. But with, you know, with our own parts, it's like, oh, that's not quite this. Like, oh, well, we know the whole design. That's not going to affect it in any way. Or, yeah, no, we got to make it different, you know, depending. So you get a little bit more freedom there with your own designs.
What have you learned in the last year outside of making new machines? What are some new thoughts that you have now that you didn't have a year ago?
Learning a lot. It's like going to school. I learned I probably should have gone to school for some level of business classes. That's something I've always been like, you can learn everything on YouTube. That's something I think I probably could have used a little bit more formal training on. And I've started to realize that more and more over the last maybe 18 months to a year. It's like, man, a little bit more knowledge on the backside of how a business runs would have been helpful.
Is it more just like the explanations of why things are important, or like what?
Well, when you talk to your accountant and your accountant's saying stuff, you don't know what they're talking about. Like different, like just not completely in the dark, but it's like, you know, I should know what this means. They're expecting me to know this. In my position, I should know this, and I don't. So it's like things like that. It's like, man, I really wish I had a little bit better background in some of those things. So that's something I definitely have come to realize more.
How are you learning it now?
Learning by doing. Researching, reading books, things like that. Got some good people. Was able to add some more management staff to the shop recently, which has helped a lot. Experience. Yeah, that have definitely more formal corporate conditioning type experience than I have. And learning to trust the guys, learning to get out of like I learn by failing a lot, but then I try to like keep everybody else from failing so that we don't fail, because it costs a lot of money to fail. I'm going to trust the guys. They don't, they might not do it exactly how I think it should be done, but as long as the part gets done, it's hard to get out of that mindset where it's like, no, just do it this way because it'll be perfect. Sometimes you got to let them figure it out. So I'm trying to learn that.
How did you make that transition? Many business owners that I know never grow into that. They always kind of fall into the trap of not trusting their people.
I've always said I hated the idea of being a micromanager.
Because you were micromanaged?
Yes. But then kind of started coming to the realization that I'm tending toward micromanagement for, I don't know, motivations of other people, but for myself, for like, listen, if I do it, if I go out and if I can just do the job and I know that it'll get done on time and I can build a customer, So like, then I'm looking outside myself and like, I'm really kind of overstepping on some of that, and just let the guys do it. Trust them to get it done. And some of that's not even me coming up with. Some of it's people like telling me like, listen, let the guys do it. They can do it. If you get out of their way, it might take a couple more hours, but they'll actually get it done. And you don't have to be involved. You keep getting involved, and they're not learning to do it themselves. So that's a tough battle though, inside, to just like let go and let other people make their own decisions. You don't even realize that you're trying to think for everybody all the time until somebody tells you sometimes. But that's a tough one to stop though.
Well, you have a different set of pressures. You know a lot. You have a lot of information. So when you're in that moment, is it more about feeling like, well, I got to let these people have an opportunity to grow themselves? Or is it more like, I wouldn't want to be treated like that? Or is it more like I need to scale the business? Or what's like that key motivation that pushes you to make the right decision in those moments?
I tend to go through the shop and just kind of look and listen and try to hear the things that are out of place, see the things that are out of place. And sometimes just like you see that and you're like, all right, I'm going to let that be for 20 minutes and circle back and see what solution they came up with. Or when the guys come to me with a problem, telling them like, all right, what's your solution first? Rather than just like coming here, all right, I see your problem. I used to at the other shop a lot. I'd see a problem from across the shop. I'd walk out and say, here's your solution, and just keep moving. And that's not as educational as letting them do it themselves a bit. So just trying to constantly remind myself. My operations guy reminds me, which is helpful too.
More in the future, what do you see on the horizon? More machines, more people?
Always more machines. We like machines. More people too. I mean, the goal is to build and grow a business that supports people to a high degree of success. Not just me, but the shop in general. People living a comfortable living, working in a comfortable shop, making good parts. So, we're definitely not at a point where we can relax. We're not at a point where we're big enough to, justify the investment, or B, the level of success we've achieved. So, more people, more machines as needed, obviously. So it's a juggling act, because like you get the work, you want the people to get the work done, but then you got to be able to maintain that staff on the far side. So it's a real juggling act to manage growth. And as you've said on this podcast before, growth is expensive.
Yeah, always costs money.
The amount of money you got to lay out before you realize any gain or return is crazy. So just trying to manage that is a real challenge, but definitely trying to grow, definitely trying to get to I don't know what size shop. I don't know what it looks like yet. I don't know where it'd be like, this is a good size, but I don't know, 50 guys, 100 guys, something like that. See how we do.
Well, there's a lot of work that's supposed to be coming back from overseas. If someone came to you and said, for the good of the nation, you have to produce 4 times more, what would your biggest constraint be? Would it be capital, money, machines, people?
Definitely capital. Because, I mean, just you want to do a week's production and you add 4 times the people. At the end of that week, that payroll's due. You haven't delivered anything. You haven't billed anything. You certainly haven't received a check, and you got to pay that. That's the hardest part about adding capacity as far as people goes. Machines, when they're not used, they sit there. You have payments and stuff depending what it is, but they're not. You can turn them off, but people, you got to keep paying them to have them come back, obviously. So adding the people and then maintaining that the payroll until whatever Forex contract actually starts paying would be the challenge. Yeah. So, and to your point with bringing manufacturing back to the States, that's another driver to help other shops grow. Like if other shops can start bringing their costs down and capture more of the business that goes overseas, that's that's good for everybody. It's not just about like, oh, I want all the work. It's like, you can cut your welding costs by 40, 50, 60%. That's good for you. That helps us be more competitive on the international marketplace, and I lose a fair amount of work to overseas manufacturing. There's some overseas job shops that put out extremely good parts. And, we've had some that we've looked at and it's, say a 4 or 5 step part, any one step in the US costs more than their landed price. Like there's absolutely no competing with it. And then you look at the part and you're like, man, that's a good part. So we're definitely still competing heavily with overseas, just on one-off prototypes, which I don't think a lot of people would really expect. I certainly didn't.
Sure.
But then you're seeing good parts come in at a fraction of your price. So it's a challenge. That's another reason, like I said, to help everybody else get better and ideally capture more of that work.
Are there things that you're making now, parts that you're building that you wouldn't have expected you'd build 3 years ago or 10 years ago? Or is the type of work you're doing, not just you, but like in general, is the type of work that's out there changing?
The type of work we do, definitely. Like I'm getting this, like wire EDM, like you're splitting tenths with that. It's insane. And like I would have laughed at anybody who wanted me to hold half a thou tolerance on something back in the day. I mean, I started as sheet metal. I know you originally said machinist. I was never a machinist. I started in sheet metal. I can run a press brake, but I started with, we don't have CNC controls where I started. I was doing a lot of hand layout, a lot of hand fabrication using shears and, no CNC machines. That's what I started in. And then you get to the machinist side of things. And I never thought I'd be doing machine work. I never thought I'd have a wire EDM or CNC lathes and mills and be making these like ludicrous parts, like super cool parts, crazy tolerances, crazy coatings, 5, 6, 7 operations on different machines. And that's something I never saw at all. And I really started to enjoy to the point where like, man, I'd love to focus even more on machining. It's just really cool.
What's most fun for you about it?
It's new. I really like new. It's something I haven't done before. It's something I can learn. There's so much you can learn in it. And it's a different style of part, sheet metal, it's a flat part and you can bend it, but you never end up with like a solid body that, whereas with milling and stuff, you take a block of something and turn it into anything you want. It's just a different approach and it's pretty cool.
So you've already bought new technology, laser welding. What's the next thing? What's the tip for the next big operation change in the future?
I only got 4 hours in FabTech so far, so I haven't found it yet. But laser welding's big. 3D printing, I think, is probably.
Do you have one?
Yeah, I've got a couple of them.
Plastic.
Yeah.
No
right now we
yet.
just use it. No, I'd love that. That'd be cost of entry. There's
huge.
Steep.
Yeah.
And you got to really have the right part to make that first investment.
Is there a huge market for it?
In certain industries there is. I know aerospace is using it pretty heavily. They're printing some crazy stuff. Just in general, like the way we use the printers we have, they're just small filament printers, nothing crazy, but we use it for fixturing. We use it for brackets and vice jaws and weld fixtures and all kinds of stuff. I mean, use it for permanent tools we use around the shop. And that's something I'd like to explore more and get more into. I'd like to get some larger printers. I've thought about putting an extruder on my water jet. I have a gigantic water jet with a huge Z height. Thought about doing something there because it's this huge XYZ gantry, but to get some of these big 3D prints accessible, it's literally the future. I mean, at some point, that's pretty much how to make everything is by.
Well, you think there's a place for that super tight tolerance milling and machining still, or do you think over the course of 100 years, 200 years, 3D printing is going to take over everything?
No, I think they'll still be using cutters.
Why?
Surface finish. You're never going to get a mirror out of 3D printer. I'd love to see it, but I think the thing you're going to see a lot of is the combo machines where you have your sintering brass or whatever material, and then you're coming right back and milling it, and then you're sintering more on and milling it. You got like impossible internal features with crazy surface finishes that you could never. There was no machine in the world that could ever make that before. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that type of technology coming in, where you'll have the ability to do both in one setup and do it faster.
Who do you think is going to be responsible for programming that machine?
An AI. I mean, my machinist might disagree, but the programming side, I mean, there's a lot of detail to it, but the softwares are good. You know, you still have they still only do what you tell them to do, but there's
like the post processing.
There's some crazy softwares out there, yeah. And
you guys use any post processors?
Yeah. All the machines need. Pretty much all of them. We don't do anything that gets done by hand anymore. As far as like, we don't have a shear. We don't have any, aside from bandsaws, we don't have anything you need. Like everything gets cut by a computer. Everything. Because there's really the precision, like nothing we cut on a shear is going to be accurate enough for most of the parts we make. So it's not worth the floor space. So yeah, every machine has some type of software attached to it. Some better than others, but.
And you think that loose tolerance work is just going to disappear?
No. It's just not, the price point doesn't justify the overhead of the machines we have. There's guys who have shops to do that work and have machines that do that work very quickly and they can't make those high tolerances, but those machines are also cheaper to run. Not necessarily cheaper to purchase because some of these things are huge, but that's like the big structural type work, you know, you never have to hold 10,000s on an I-beam in a building, right. You know. It's just a different type of work. You know, you're getting into, you know, precision packaging equipment and medical stuff, things like that. That's kind of our thing, but that's also where you can justify the higher shop rates and things like that. You know, it's not just an economy of like make a ton of parts fast because it's like, this one can take 3 days. That's what, you know, it's okay to take 3 days and make this one part as long as it's good at the end, you're fine. So we're working on some AI stuff that I can't really share, but do you think that manufacturing is going to be resistant to it? You think people that just don't trust it, don't want to use it, don't want to be a part of it? Yeah. I think a lot of people will be. I think
there's a lot of data in manufacturing. A lot of it,
yeah,
nobody in your shop probably looks at. One of our goals is to try to make as much of that data analyzed as possible, but some of the only ways to do it is AI, but I have a fear that the industry as a whole won't trust it.
That's going to come back to like the older shops versus the newer shops. I think the newer guys are looking for, we grew up with computers and computers have made our lives easier since day one. You know, like we started with that. We started them at a very usable level and they were
at a young age, and
they only get easier and easier to everything. They just make things easier, you know? So I think especially in like the CNC space, all these guys are on computers programming all the time. I don't think it's going to be resisted as much. I think if you get to like a lot of these older shops, it's going to be a lot harder to get them to engage, especially because AI has this stigma. And there are some real precautions that need to be taken and,
sure,
you know, understandings that need to be had before people just start playing with it crazy. But I think the people who don't adopt it are just going to, their businesses will phase out over time. I don't know what number of years that would be on, but you know, it's just like if you were going to resist email, like, oh, I'd rather just like email. Can you imagine not having email? But there's people who didn't want to try email. It's
even
dumb.
still today.
This is hard. I'll just send a letter or whatever
fax.
People did. A fax. Yeah. People ask for a fax number. I don't know. A fax number? They e-fax? Like, no, email me. Take a picture on your phone and text it to me. I don't fax. But yeah, like people still resist things as simple as email or text messages, which, you know, people thought, oh, it's dumb. I'll just call you. Now text messages are, I don't know if they're more common than cell phone than calls, but you know, I think people who don't get into that at some stage will end up getting surpassed.
You think that things have been changing faster and faster, even just in your 15, 20 years?
Definitely.
Are you ever worried that you can't keep up yourself? You're somebody who changes quite a bit.
I've never resisted change. I've always been very open to new ideas, new processes, new anything. I've moved a lot. I like new experiences. So for me, I'm not worried about resisting change. Being able to afford to change fast enough, that's where the challenge will come in.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of these, even softwares are crazy expensive. It's one thing I didn't really consider when I started this. Was like, all right, this machine costs this much. This machine costs this much. You don't plan to spend $80,000-$100,000 in software, until it was like, oh, that one added up and that one added up and this, and I want another seat of that. And it's like, wow, it's just 10 grand here, there, everywhere. And all of a sudden so being able to afford even software it's almost like buying a machine, some of these softwares.
Yeah.
So it goes along with being able to afford to grow, got to be able to afford to grab the new technology before it surpasses you or makes you obsolete.
Is the market looking for people that are more tolerant for new technology? Is it a badge of honor to talk to your customers about that? We have this new machine. We're thinking about this in a different way. There's this huge push in the 90s and 2000s for continuous improvement, but back then it didn't really feel like people actually wanted it. How does it feel now? I
feel like, from my experience, if a vendor talks about something they're adding to their shop, I get excited because it's, especially like with vendors, you have a good relationship with a vendor, somebody you give a lot of business to, and they up their capacity. It's like, oh, great, I don't have to go search for somebody else. You're adding to your business in whatever way.
It's a relief to you.
Yeah. And a lot of these things are ease of use. Like I have a customer who has, over the last couple of years, gone from, sending you part drawings and a quote request to then a digital portal where the drawings download automatically. So now it's a fully autonomous quoting system. I get emails, I click a link, populate it, send it off, get a PO. No human interaction at all. And those things make your life easier. And then now they rolled out a vendor portal where we can see what they see about our order. So we can look and we can go in there and populate, like Lisa goes in every day and updates projected delivery dates on anything that might be behind, So now I don't have customers that they're not calling me, where's my parts? I'm not running around the shop, where's my parts? She looks at Fulcrum, goes on their portal, updates it. And I find that it's convenient. It makes our lives easier, So I definitely enjoy when a customer tries to get into a new tech, especially less when it phases me out, but more when it makes my job easier,
Sure.
Although it's two-edged because then the AI makes the call. So,
Can't argue your case anymore.
The purchaser might know that I make that part better, or I've succeeded in that part and it's hard. AI says that guy's cheaper, give him the job, So there are some challenges that we'll have to overcome, but by and large, I enjoy when a customer or vendor, whoever adds something new, adopts a new tech. And it makes me look like, what should I be doing? If this is working for them, should I be getting involved?
Mm-hmm. Last question. What's on your mind for the future? What do you want to tell your future self?
Hopefully it was worth it.
It already is, right?
So far, so good. But hopefully I'm looking back and saying, man, good job. It was worth the hard times and the late nights and the early mornings and the, missed events. So that's the goal.
Well, Abe, thanks for spending the time talking with me.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed your story. It
was great.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.